this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. I don't normally take a look at plants in this manner, but as this is a different type of thing for me, I'm doing it slightly differently so that it's just a bit different to my normal videos. The bit that's different is the camera's on the tripod while I chat about this plant and basically the care collab in general. Now normally I would hold the camera and it would waggle around and people complain that they get seasick. So I do listen, apparently. Anyway, this whole saga of the care collab sort of thing was inspired by Nina from Ninja Orchids. She's taking part in this one as well. That won't always be the case, I believe, but I'm new to all this. And the other channels that are taking part in this one are Karin's Orchids, that might be pronounced Karin, I'm not sure, and Ray's Garden and the Orchid SaGa, who apparently was a last minute joiner. Better late than never. Just get in there. Joining in is the important bit, not when. So those three channels will be in my video description, so that you can click direct on the link and go to the channel basically, and their video should in theory be their latest one, unless you leave it too long, in which case it might not be, but it'll be there anyway. Okay, so that's that thing out of the way. I will be joining in quite a few of these, but obviously I'll only be joining in where I've got the plant involved. That's the way it works. And sometimes I might choose not to, but most of the time I will if asked. I've got one point to clear up. This idea and everything was started by Nina, but I am getting requests to join in care collabs from other channels. I'd like to know what Nina thinks about that. In other words, is that okay and encouraged, or what? I mean, at the end of the day, the decision to join in or not with those is probably mine, but I'd just like to know. Anyway, I will take the camera off the tripod in a minute. We'll have a closer look at the plant. My environment, as I'm new to this, most of you know my channel, but I suppose the important thing about my environment is it works like a greenhouse, but it's attached to the house. So obviously I'm stood in the doorway at the moment, so I'm actually standing in my lounge, even though we're looking into what looks like a greenhouse, but it's not. It's a converted conservatory. But it works fundamentally like a greenhouse, apart from the fact it is attached to the house. And I can change my environment in here by opening this door. Because in the winter time, for instance, when the temperatures out here are low, if I open the door to the lounge, I let heat in without using a heater. It just takes some of the house heat. I don't usually do it the other way round. In other words, when it gets hot out here, I don't open the door and let the heat into the lounge, because that's where I am and I don't want to get hot. But there is an exchange of air, and I do have a proper exchange of air with an extractor fan and an inlet fan, which changes the whole air in here in about an hour if they stayed on that long. They're triggered on a thermostat basically. As it starts getting too warm in here, they cut in, suck out the hot air near the roof and bring in some cooler air down below. I keep my humidity high. I suspect at this time of day, yeah, it's over 80% out here at the moment. Don't take any notice of that little gadget on the table. That's a Cheap and Cheerful, and that usually says it's 99% out here, because I spilled some water on it once and it doesn't work properly, and I can't be bothered to replace it because I do have a proper one up on the wall which runs my humidifier, endearingly known as Hurricane Hector. So anyway, that's a basic setup. I do keep my humidity high. I lower it a bit in the winter. So in the winter the humidifier would very, very rarely need to come on unless we had a particularly bright sunny day, which would raise the temperature, yeah, which might kick it on. But most of the time that's a summer thing to keep the humidity up as the temperature rises. So I do have some automated controls out here, and I've got two large circulating fans. One stays on 24/7 except for when I'm filming, because the camera is about 2 inches away from it at the moment. You can see the hairy bit on the right hand side, that's the edge of the fan. When you've got 2 cats, everything's covered in hair, you know. You get your best black suit out of the wardrobe, it's got hair on it. That's cats for you. Anyway, the plant in question, enough waffling, is, well, I bought it as Recchara, or Recchara, 2 C's in there. I'll do pop-ups with the name anyway so that you can read them out yourselves, because my pronunciation is not always brilliant. Am I bothered? Probably not. The thing is, it has actually been reclassified. If you dig down into this, it's effectively a cross between a very unusual species that you probably wouldn't come across in your normal travels, but it's crossed with a Brassicatlia polka dot, and that's wherein comes the problem with the name, because down in the mix there was at least one Laelia down there somewhere. That's been reclassified, so the Laelia comes out, yeah, and becomes Cattleya. And most things, if it moves, it's becoming a Cattleya. And then what was Cattleyas are becoming something else, which is just, I don't know, I think it's just done to wind us up. But in my notes I've got it as Recchara, and it will probably stay like that because it's still being sold like that, and probably will be for another 10 years. The only time I'm particularly concerned about a correct naming with the latest variant of whatever it's called is if I'm getting it anywhere near a show where the RHS are involved. And last time I did that, I spent a long time checking all my names, and I talked to a couple of the RHS judges about my plants, and they were still using the old name. Oh, I don't know. You can't win, can you? Yeah. So be it. Anyway, its current name, if I can flip and pronounce it, is Myrmecatavola. So that's identifying really that the Laelia has been taken out. And the rather unusual species that I'd never heard of, that is basically 50% of this plant, is Myrmecatavola. I think I pronounced that right. Anyway, you'll have a pop-up, and then it's Tibicinis. So basically they've taken a load of letters and stuck the letter I in between each one of them to make it look pretty. Anyway, as I said, you'll have the pop-up. Now that consists of 50% of this plant, so when you're trying to work out how you might look after it, I would up that end, if you see what I mean, because the rest of the plant is basically 25% Brassavola nodosa, so that's a reasonable influence. And then the other 25% is a right assortment and mismatch of basically some Cattleya species, some hybrids. It's a right mix down that bottom end. So the most important component part of this is the 50% part. And this is a strange plant. It grows in deciduous forests, so straight away that tells you that it's going to be pretty bright in the winter. But even in the growing season, when the leaves would be on the trees, this is often found in full sun for at least part of the day. So that immediately tells you this is a high light orchid. Now sometimes that highlight requirement is just where it is and how it likes to grow. But most of the time when you get a highlight orchid like that, if it doesn't get it, it won't bloom. And I was told by somebody some time ago, oh, you don't want to get that, you'll never bloom that in the UK because you don't get enough light. Well, we shall see. But that's true at the moment because this is a non-bloomed plant. It has yet to bloom. Okay, so that's the thing, you know. The fact that the forests are deciduous normally means that there's a problem for the trees in that environment. If they're going to dump their leaves, there's normally a reason, and it's normally a drop in temperature, possible shortening of the day lengths, and basically lack of rain. That's often the thing. It's the drier season, because where our tropical orchids come from, you are looking normally at a wet season and a dry season. They don't get the 4 seasons like I would get in the UK, for instance. They don't do the spring, summer, autumn, winter. They basically do wet and dry. And the drier season would not provide enough moisture for those trees to maintain that leaf cover, so they dump them, yeah, and that's when the bright light would occur for that plant. Also probably a drop in temperature, but might not be too much. Don't go mad. You know, this is not a 5-degree centigrade in winter jobby. It is fundamentally a Cattleya type. You know, don't go mad. But basically the plant in question is a very large plant, and its characteristic that would make it probably not suitable for most people to grow if they wanted to bloom it is the spike with the flowers on, because it's huge. You're looking at 3 meters, possibly heading up towards 4 in some instances. So you're looking at a giant of a spike. I'm sure it's a beauty to behold, but it don't, you know, if it don't fit where you keep your orchids, then, you know, it's not going to work, is it? So, and obviously somebody's taken this plant with its spectacular blooms and thought, I wonder if I can do something with that and actually get that spike right down to a more sensible size. So the hybrids start coming into play, where you try and get the traits of that blooming and some of the traits of the plant, but reduce it down. And that's the idea of the hybridization programs that some of the nurseries do. And sticking a Brassavola nodosa in with it will have dwarfed it down, because that's not a large plant. That's quite a small, compact plant, quite a tidy looking plant, quite honestly. Night scented blooms, nodosa. Now I don't know whether that trait's been passed on to this particular hybrid or not, and I also don't know if the original species that's gone into this is actually fragrant. I don't know that. I'll let you know whether this plant's fragrant when I get some blooms. And notice I said when, not if. And the other thing I would say as far as care is concerned is that both of these can be found, the nodosa and the Myrmecatavola, the Myrmecatavola, that other one, the species that makes up 50% of this hybrid, they are both often found as lithophytes, so they can be found growing on the ground amongst rocks and things like that. And that immediately says to me, you do not keep these roots wet. You just don't do it. It's that type of plant that's not going to tolerate soggy root mass. So my care for this was immediately, well, you can have the normal Cattleya treatment then. And as you can see, it's gone in one of my holy clay pots with large bark, and it's been wired in to keep it steady. It just got my normal Cattleya treatment. Now I got this off a UK seller off eBay last May, so I've only had it just over a year, a fraction over a year, and it was repotted in June last year, and that was to take advantage of the latest new growth that was starting to produce some root growth. And I always try and repot Cattleyas when new roots are starting, or if it's a plant I've had some time, I may know that they're about to, depending on where the growth is. I mean, some Cattleyas don't produce their roots till the growth are mature. Anyway, so that's why it's ended up in the clay pot with large bark, so it's got good drainage and a lot of air via the large bark and via the holes in the pot. So there's a lot of air in around those roots. When I water that plant, most of the water that goes in the top comes straight out the bottom, which is exactly what I want. And then it dries pretty fast. Now as the bark ages, it will start drying a bit slower. And that will be my indicator to think perhaps the bark might be getting a bit old now. And when that starts to happen, I'll be thinking, right, when's the next chance I'm going to get to repot this? Yeah, and in my notes, hopefully if I've kept them up to date, it will tell me that the roots come on this plant when the growth is whatever, you know, just after it starts, half mature, fully mature plus 3 months. There is a variety. Anyway, that's enough waffling. That's basically my logic as to why it's ended up in that pot, where I got it from. Excuse me, and a fair old bit about its makeup. And when you get a hybrid, if you want to know about it, you know, perhaps some care and things like that, if you can't get it from anywhere else, then try and find out what's in it, what makes it up. And once you've found that out, you might be able to find some guidelines on how to look after it. Yeah, you see what I mean? Because you won't get many guidelines on a hybrid. Right, I'll just shut this down for a minute, get the camera off, and we'll have a closer look. Okay, so we're mobile now. Sorry about the rain on the roof. I mean, I can control the environment in here quite well, but I certainly can't control it outside. So if it decides to rain, it splats on the roof and makes a noise. Such is life, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, this particular plant has done a tremendous amount of root growth since I've got it. You know, the roots are round and round the top of the pot. They're down into the pot. I now have a very satisfactory root system. Now, looking at the plant itself, it's been grown on. Yeah, so this is not a division. It's been grown on from a young plant. You can tell that by some of the older pseudobulbs, which are tiny. The oldest one being the one with the yellow leaf, which will drop in the not too distant future. And then the next one next to that, still relatively small, and then the size starts to increase as you get towards the latest growth, which I forget is going to be this one. The one prior to this one will be here, but this plant's got two leads. It's heading off in two directions here. So we've got another lead here, which means I should get another new growth over this side of the plant soon. That will be good. The more new growths, the more chances of blooms we get. So this is the latest growth. It's now matured. I don't think it's going to get any bigger. There is no sign of any blooms in there. And this is one of those lovely Cattleya types. I've got a couple of these. And they do this at the base of the leaf. And you think, oh, it's going to push a spike out. No, it's not. It does it on all of them, whether it blooms or not. But one day you'll get that, and then the spike will be produced. But I would suggest that there is some truth in the fact that somebody said, have fun trying to get that to bloom in the UK because of its content. And now that I've had a good look at what it's made up of, that could be true. So all I can do is give this the brightest light I've got. So it lives in that hole over there. So it's right in the corner. It gets light coming in from what is effectively the side of the grow space and from the end of the grow space. So it gets a hell of a lot of light on that corner there. There's no plant shading it. There's nothing above it. There are plants around it, but not above it or to the side. So it's as close to the glass as I can get on two sides of the grow space. The only more light I could give it, it wouldn't be much more, would be to get it closer to the roof, I suppose. For instance, if I hung it up there, it would get a bit more light. But for this year, it's staying where it is. And I want to see if that is enough. If it's not, we'll adjust it next year. But I would like to see some blooms on it for obvious reasons. We're currently producing a nice new growth down here, which is good. And that will be the one that I'll base my notes on as to when the roots are produced. Yeah, because the roots that are here, that are active roots, these have got growing tips, have come from this, not from this new one. Yeah, so I will have to wait and see. But this could be the type of Cattleya that produces the roots on the previous growth as the new growth comes. Yeah? So while we're all watching our new growth to see when the roots come, they're tricking you. They're coming out from behind that new growth. And if you look at that, that's probably what's happening. New growth with a growing tip. Sorry, new root with a growing tip. There's another one. There's another two there. This one, growing tip. So all the growing tips on the roots in this area have come from this growth. And they're new, because then they're not up to full length yet. Some of them will head down in the pot, some of them out over the side, no doubt, like this one. Yeah, so they haven't been there that long. So I would suggest on this one a calculated guess that new roots are produced as the new growth is formed, but not on the new growth itself. They're on the growth that it comes out from. That would be a pretty good guess. And that's my latest growth. We have no sign of any spike or I don't even know if this one produces a sheath. I don't think it does. Looking at the older pseudo bulbs, I'd have thought that one of them would have produced a sheath if it was that type, so it probably doesn't. So in other words, you know, the spike with the buds will come straight out of the leaf apex, straight out of the joint. So anyway, as far as growth is concerned on this plant, I'm quite happy with its growth. I'm quite happy that it's settled into its pot. It's got a good root system now. I've got no worries about that. And its latest growth has got a nice healthy green leaf, as large as any of the others on the plant. So providing I can keep that going, and that's how you really can tell whether your plant's doing okay, is your latest growth as good as anything else on the plant? And it should be as good, and hopefully a little bit better, but at least as good. If it's not as good, then you can stop and think, why would that be? It's probably because your environment's not quite as good as it has been grown in before. Then you look at your next growth, yeah? And if it's starting to go down yet again, then you need to think about changing your environment, because it'll only get worse. It won't suddenly get better, if you see what I mean. So the goal is to always get your new growths as good as the previous, you know. And if you can maintain that over many, many years, you'll have a nice big specimen plant one day, which is what we all wish for. Anyway, my goal for this one, now that it's got its good root system, is to get it to bloom. And I don't know whether the spike is produced at the time the latest growth matures, because if that was true, I'd have some signs already if it was going to. Yeah, but I don't know whether that's true. Now, it could be that this needs to be mature for 3 or 4 months before it produces the spike, in which case there could still be hope for some blooms. But I don't know that yet. One day, I hope it will bloom, and then I'll know. And then for future reference, I'll know forevermore. Anyway, that's my plant. It's coming on. I'm quite pleased with it. And certainly well pleased with the root growth and the fact that I've got a new growth. I would like to see a new growth over this side of the plant to go with that one, but as yet it's not happening. So we shall have to wait and see on that. Right, that's my take on a care collab. I can assure you that others may well not be as long. They certainly won't be as long as if it's a species, because there won't be so much to say. There's quite a lot of the words in this particular care collab are based on the fact that this is, I'd say, a relatively complex hybrid. And it starts off with 50% of a plant I've never even heard of. And chances are you won't come across that particular species very often, I doubt. There's a lot of nurseries wouldn't stock that simply because of the flower spike on it. It's going to make it so unwieldy, most collectors wouldn't want it, because they wouldn't be able to cope with it, if you see what I mean, which is a shame, because I'm sure it's absolutely fabulous. But anyway, I'll be joining in on some of these, as I've said, and take a look in the description for the other channels. And yeah, thanks to Nina for letting me join in. It takes away some of the worry about being able to think of something to film every day. At least this adds in, you know, it adds to the list of things to do, which is brilliant. So it actually suits me fine. So thanks a bunch, and see you all next time. And if you're new to my channel, as a consequence of this, please think about subscribing. You know, it's a nice thing to do. It won't kill you, don't cost you anything, and you know, it's a good way of spreading the word around. You know, then who knows, I might come and look at some of your videos, because I think the idea is that all of the members of the Care Collab subscribe to each other. it would certainly make life easier. Like this morning, I had to go and find those channels that were in my email, two of which I'd never heard of, so I had to go and find them and have a look, and those videos were there, so I had a chance to have a look at them. So yeah, that's how it works, and it's a brilliant idea, and I hope it continues. See you next time.